You don't give you Florida State? I don't like that.
Yes, like bookmarks. Some things are not
It's not even a bookmark. So, but even if it's not a bookmark, say like I'm not intended agenda item 4, it's on page 52 of the meeting.
Oh, what's that?
I miss you very much. Usually I can see you around town taking pictures. I haven't seen you for a while.
Yeah, it's been busy getting all the websites and various other software set up.
Yeah.
You'll see me more.
No, I'm not. I think mine got.
So different corners. Yeah, man. I never did this.
Hey, you never know.
All right, we'll give you the strong list then. Thank you. I think so. I can handle two at once.
So why doesn't this let me download this?
Y'all back?
We are.
Did you want to come back?
Yeah. I can't figure out what my.
Oh, what's it doing? Come on.
Robert? Oh, you got it? You Fonzie to do that. Thank you.
All right, we ready to go? All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Maitland City Council meeting of Monday, October 12th, 2020. If everyone in the audience would please make their electronic devices go really quiet. I appreciate that. And we're blessed to have Mike Kwasinski from the Asbury United Methodist Church to provide an invocation for us tonight. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's pray together. Lord, we come before you this evening with gratitude. We ask that you would remind us to be grateful for the things that we too often take for granted. We're grateful to be able to gather together here tonight to do this work. We lift up those who are suffering right now from the pandemic and all of its continued effects. We lift up those who are sick. We lift up those who are unemployed. We lift up those who are just exhausted. We also lift up those who are working hard on behalf of the well-being of others. We celebrate the contributions of so many courageous, faithful men and women, police, firefighters, medical workers, city officials, and so many others who are leading our strong response. Tonight we ask for your guidance, O God, to do what is best for our city. Give us ears to listen with compassion. Give us discernment to make decisions to the best of our ability. We ask all of this in the name of God. Amen.
Thank you, Mike. Those of you that are willing and able, if you would please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, everybody. Okay. The presentation, just want to go straight here. Okay. We're not going to go do this down there, so we'll just do it right here. Okay. The International City and County Management Association, the ICMA, is wanting to present a certificate of distinction to the city of Maitland, Florida, for exemplifying the standards established by the International City County Management Association in the application of performance data to local government management, including training, verification, public reporting, planning and decision-making, networking, and accountability. Now, this is presented in conjunction with the 106th Annual ICMA Annual Conference. This is dated September 24th, 2020. And this is indeed, distinction for the city. And thanks for all of our staff that helped us to bring to this point, bring this kind of glory to the city. Again, thank you. Okay. We have a public hearing. Well, before we get to that, I'd like to, begging the council's indulgence, I would like to be able to move agenda item number 6 to immediately following decision item number 1. Okay? All right, let's get to our public hearing. Ms. Maria?
An ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, granting a 3-year extension to the exclusive franchise with Waste Pro Florida, Inc. for the collection of residential solid waste, yard waste, and recyclables, multifamily solid waste and recyclables, and commercial solid waste in the City of Maitland. Amending the solid waste and recyclable materials collection franchise agreement adopted by ordinance 1239, providing for acceptance by granting and providing for conflict, severability, and an effective date.
Okay, Ms. Shearer.
This is the public hearing for the ordinance that was introduced on September 28th, 2020. It is the first renewal under our franchise agreement with Wastrel. There was one 3-year renewal included in the original bid that was awarded to Wastrel. And staff is recommending we exercise that renewal with a few additions, changes we made to the contract. One, we recommend adding another renewal option so that at the end of this renewal, you have flexibility at the city's sole discretion as to whether or not you want to extend it or go out to bid. We added organic recyclables to the list of non-exclusive services, although there's no organic recycling going on commercially right now. There could be, and we'd like to take advantage of that if it becomes available. We're removing references to the RFID chip technology, which we are no longer utilizing, and additionally, address the recycling situation. So the marketing and recycling program, it no longer generates revenue. There are actually processing fees. So we clarified if revenue comes back in the future, that formula is still there. But currently, we are actually paying to recycle, and I believe it's council's wish to continue to recycle, even if there's a cost associated. It does not increase our garbage rates or change our garbage rates to the residents. They've been unchanged since 2011.
Okay, anybody have any questions of the city manager before we go to the public for any input that they might have? Hearing none, this will be the public period on this specific agenda item. If anybody would like to address the council on this agenda item, now would be the time. Hearing and seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. And any other questions? We had Platt Loftus here the other day, 28th. I think we had questions for Platt. Anybody have any questions? Not a motion to be in order.
Make a motion to adopt the ordinance to extend and amend the franchise for solid waste and recyclable materials collection franchise agreement for 1 3-year term as outlined in section 1C, subject to the modifications 1 through 11.
Second. We have a motion. Looking
I'll
for a
second.
And a second. All right, any further questions or comments? Hearing none, Ms. Maria.
Thank you. Councilmember Guthrie,
Aye.
Councilmember Paul Harrison,
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas,
Aye.
Councilmember Wise,
Aye.
Mayor McDonald.
Aye. Okay. Thank you very much. Ms. City Manager, any old business we want to talk about?
No, it's time.
Well, how about that? Okay. On to the consent agenda. Anybody from the council wish to remove any items from the consent agenda?
I would like to have item 2 removed.
Item 2.
And I can explain once we get there.
Okay. That will then become the new number 7. Right, there you go. All right, very good. Thank you, Mike. Anybody else have anything they'd like to remove from the consent agenda? Hearing none. Anybody from the public like to address any of the items, items 2 and 3 on the consent agenda? Hearing none. Ms. Maria, do you want to call the roll?
I'll make a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, motion would probably be really handy.
I did it.
Thank you.
I'll second.
And a second, very good. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Ms. Maria?
Councilmember Paul Harrison,
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas,
Aye.
Councilmember Wise,
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie,
Aye.
Mayor McDonald.
Aye. Okay. This is one of our favorite times in the meeting, our general public period, where anybody that's in the room would like to address the council on any non-agenda item. Now would be the time. Anybody that wants to sing anybody's praises, this would be the time. All right, so we don't hear any at the moment, so we'll go ahead and close the public period. And it appears as though we'll head on now to our first decision item. Dan, you want to address this topic?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. First item on the agenda is a waiver request by the St. Anthony's Coptic Church. Just to give you guys a real brief reminder, there's a couple of members here on council that weren't on council when this came through not too long ago. Project is located at 1185 Wymore Road. It is the existing Coptic church. They had a PD originally approved back in 2017 with site plan approval in 2018, followed by building permits in 2018 and 2019. So they came in for a PD amendment back in May of 2019 to amend some of the conditions in the original PD approval. They wanted to remove a condition about providing the sidewalk along Wymore Road, as well as undergrounding, the requirement to underground the utilities on the north side and the east side. So the ordinance, as the ordinance came through, it went through the process, and this is a little map of the two different distribution lines that they were requesting to remove the undergrounding requirement, as well as the sidewalk. So in August of 2019, P&Z voted unanimously to deny that request. And in December, DRC followed with the unanimous recommendation to deny the request to remove those conditions. And back in February of 2020, council unanimously voted not to introduce the ordinance to remove those two conditions. Fast forward to recently, in August of this year, the staff did receive another request from the representatives of the Coptic Church asking to waive the one-year time limit. As you know, when any decision is made on land, there is a one-year waiting period unless 4 out of 5 council members waive that for cause. So section 753 does reference that one-year waiting period unless 4 members of council choose to waive that. If approved, the applicant would, if their request tonight is approved, the applicant would then still need to reapply for a PD amendment to get that condition removed or the conditions removed. So the applicant, in a letter from the applicant, they intend to request to modify the PD to remove the requirement to underground the utility lines along the northern side of the property. In their letter to us, they indicated that they're willing to complete the sidewalk and remove the poles on the eastern side, but they want a waiver on the northern side. But until an application comes in, we don't know for sure what the request is, but that's what was indicated in their letter. So again, tonight, their request is only to request a waiver of that one-year waiting period. It's not about the request of removing conditions, it's merely the one-year waiting period. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Do you not see the applicants here?
I was gonna ask, is anyone here representing the applicants?
I do not see anybody here.
Did you talk to them, I mean, last time?
We called them on the phone and we sent an email reminding them about tonight's meeting.
Dan, when they asked to remove the conditions, I guess that was in 2019, you said, was that after the rest of the project had been completed?
So the majority of the project's completed, they don't have their final COs.
But as far as the construction part of the project, it was completed?
It was under construction.
So they didn't come out at any point during the construction and say, we're not going to be able to do this?
No, it was not from the end when they were getting close to their CO, and that was one of the remaining conditions holding up their CO.
Did we have a situation with the JCC where they didn't meet all of our requirements? Am I thinking about that right?
Not that I'm aware of.
They had some issues, Mike, I think regarding the parking.
Right. You're not aware of that?
I'm not aware of that.
Anyone?
But those became a moot point. Like,
As far as, the only thing that they had was the pilot agreement.
No, I think they're thinking of, if it predated you, and thinking of, they didn't do something that we asked them to do.
Right.
And then they started the work and they had to come back through where, when they were making the change, they didn't complete everything they were supposed to with the first PD.
Okay.
And then before they moved forward with the next thing, they were required to complete.
So did we require that they do it?
Yes.
Okay.
all right, any Anybody have any questions of, Mr. Mathis?
I talked to Dan about this today. I wish the applicant was here, but certainly things have changed for them since they applied for this, and certainly it's changed since December when they kind of last came through here. But I do have, we can talk about this from a discussion standpoint later, but I am sensitive to the impact the churches have had during this and economic issues. I also talked to Dan and to Sharon today about looking at this problem. These issues are not going to be the last time we see issues with undergrounding.
Yep.
And it's a long-term goal of the city to get these underground. So I was, with a real brief kind of effort this afternoon, but knowing that we would need to do some more analysis on this of what kind of programs could we put together, what can we do to get things underground, but not look at this project by project. Let's put together something that could work citywide or at least district-wide, doing things into segments that could get these things underground, but not having this be every time a project comes in, something that we look at. So I think there's things we could look at here, but it's a hard issue because there was a commitment on their part to do this. It was done with a greater PD and it was all approved, but certainly things have changed, and I also think that this undergrounding, it is a long-term objective, one we should do, and I was just trying to brainstorm with ideas of how we can do this so that we can deal with not just this present issue, but ones that I think this will come up in the future.
So Mike, and I live right next to this church, and it's a beautiful project. I too wish there was a representative here, so you could ask questions. The one thing that I do see is on that north side is, on the east side, it's pretty simple. It's just poles and the line. But on that north side, what does that consist of? Because I saw a lot of stuff jammed up today when I was going by, just looking at it.
Switch gear there, Sharon?
And the other problem is, to what Mike was saying, is that's the last property in Maitland. Because then you go over that overpass and it's Altamont. So really they would, and then across the street is county. So they would have to absorb that whole cost, and I don't know how you would share that. Because across the street at Maitland Club is already underground. So they're all done. The only thing left is the Lutheran Church right there.
Yeah.
That's
It is a difficult thing, and it might, to your point, where do we begin to delineate every project being a snowflake? Because you remember the office building down at Park Avenue in 1792. And it is frustrating. And I don't know that there is the wisdom of Solomon here to decide where to draw that line. And we certainly can be sympathetic to difficult times that that the virus has brought on to us. But again, yeah, Mike, it's not easy. And again, we were both here when we rejected it before. And it's not easy, but I'm wondering where we represent ourselves best.
So what I was talking today about was, this is just moving up the process. This is not committing us to do anything.
Right.
But I think that
The time limit being what?
yeah, I think that regardless of this, I would like to see us kind of move forward with thinking about how to do this and talking to Sharon and Dan about looking at the way other cities have done this and kind of figuring out, because like you said, Deb, if we were to just go what project deserves to get a waiver of undergrounding, it gets difficult. And how do you apply that standard, and how do you have consistency of that standard? So I think that it'd be nice to have a procedure that we have available to us, that the city has got a longer term system, like I said, either area goal to get things underground, and here's how we're setting it up, and here's how you contribute, and how the work would be all done together. And in certain places, it doesn't matter, you can do it piece by piece. But clearly in other places, what does it make sense? If you have one block or one section of a block, do it, and then the poles are gonna be there right next door. So I think there's,
Well, to that, I mean, is that, all that electric that's right there, they're undergrounding, that might be going across the street to the county. Might be going to Altamont.
You know, and I think you're both on the right track in that this is a citywide problem. I mean, let's not pretend that we don't know that we've got power infrastructure that is at best dated, okay? So it's time for us to have a vision to how to go about this, subject to that we are going to continue to be, you know, at the mercy of Duke Energy or whoever their successor may be until 2035. It's a challenge. Every one of you are right. You know, we all get this. I just don't know. And I welcome open ideas. And it's a worthy discussion.
yeah, so I would say on this and we're not being asked to vote on that aspect of it tonight,
Yes.
really, this is just a time frame issue.
Just a waiver of a year-long limit.
And for me, I'm okay with the time frame issue waiver, knowing though that what we really need to work on between now and whatever the actual vote on this and anything else is, are there options? And there may not be better options, and if that's where we end up, that's where we end up. But I think it's worth the time to see what options we have in creating districts, creating whatever it is that we can do to look at this and get the power on the ground, which I think we all want to see, and even I think every individual property owner wants to see it. It's shouldering that burden, the cost, the planning of it, the engineering, all of that. I think we could do it potentially, maybe or maybe not, but more efficiently if we did it with a comprehensive plan and not just piece by piece. So that would be my thought, is that I understand, and again, I wish they were here, and we could really ask some more questions about how they got here, but understanding that things have changed and it is a difficult time for a place that requires people to be in their services. And so I get that, and so I want to be respectful and sensitive to that, but also knowing that there's a commitment and what's changed and how can we help further the eventual goal of undergrounding this power. So that's where I
So this came up before the COVID, so they were trying to get out of that part of the project before COVID hit. My sense is that, you know, we entered a negotiation and signed a deal, and like we've done with other applicants, and they got what they wanted out of the deal, and then when it came time for us to get our share, you know, they said no. And so what kind of precedent are we setting here? If you cut a deal with the city, you know, you can come in with a hard luck story and get out of it if you get, you know, a couple members of council to agree with you. You know, to me that undermines our position long term. As far as an undergrounding plan, I agree we need to look at undergrounding from a community-wide, maybe regions within the city, but we're not going to come up with that.
Not tonight.
We're not going to come up with that in the next couple months. I mean, that's a a massive undertaking. If we decide to look at every section of the city and what areas, you know, should be underground and how we cost share, and so that's, you know, that's a huge, expensive, hire a consultant type of deal. It's not something we're gonna, Dan's gonna sit down with the church and suddenly work out and come up with a magic.
You scared me with the hire a consultant stuff, Mike.
But, so you know, I would wait the year, and you know, we haven't cut anybody else any slack on these things. We didn't cut the JCC any slack on this. To me, when you kind of tell somebody, well, kind of go ahead and proceed, you're kind of tipping your hat that when they come back, you're probably going to give them what they want, or else you wouldn't have sent them out there to do it. So, with that, I'll wrap up.
So let me just clarify something. I'm not saying we should actually give them the waiver, or I'm not saying we should grant it. I'm saying, is there a way we can figure this out or not? And if there isn't, and I'm not saying we should let them out as a requirement. What I'm saying, all this vote is to try to hear this through in a sooner time frame. I think that's the way I perceive it. Is you're just letting this process move forward sooner than waiting 6 more months or whatever the time frame. That's all I'm. It's not that, and I talked to Dan about this. By granting this waiver, you're not setting any precedent that you're going to actually do anything from the amendments process. You're not committing yourself to do anything. You're just committing to have the process start now versus start when we absent this waiver.
It would be a year from when you guys denied it.
So that was what?
February 21. I don't think it really does anything. It doesn't buy him time. It doesn't really do anything. In fact, it does the opposite, right? And I think the story is, if I'm right, Dan, please, because I remember they came to planning and zoning. We saw this at planning and zoning, and they talked to us. I think it was they went for a loan. They were going to be promised a loan of so much, and that's when they did the agreement. Well, they went to go get the loan, and then things changed. Is that story about correct?
Yeah, that's what they indicated, that their loan had decreased considerably from when they originally started.
Right. So it's not, you know, they already have been working the money for, what, 2-3 years now? So
They have a long-term plan.
yeah. So they're not piecemealing it together. They're not, you know, in little by little.
So if they knew during or pretty soon after they started construction that their money wasn't going to come through, and they didn't tell us until the project was almost done.
I wish they were here.
I agree. I think that's my biggest concern is that, you know, and you know, pardon me being a lawyer here, but if I went into court and I wanted to get a judge to grant my motion, the least I do is show up. So at this point, we don't have enough information to say, you know, what is your plan? What is your commitment? If we grant you this tonight, what are we going to see when this comes back to us? And so I left with questions rather than solutions, and I feel like we are setting a dangerous precedent by moving forward, by granting something that are we going to turn around and when the application comes back in, we're going to say, no, never mind, just kidding. You know, I don't want to put them in a position where they're getting false up, but I also don't think that we should be changing our mind when council had already made previous decisions on this matter.
Okay. Time to go to the public?
All right, very good. Anybody from the public like to address this specific agenda item? Now would be the time. Okay, so hearing that and seeing that, we'll bring it back to council. Any other questions or comments? All right, very good. Ms. Bray, if you would, I'll look for a motion.
So it sounds like the motion is to deny the waiver request of St. Anthony's Coptic Church.
Well, motion. We have a
Is
motion.
that right?
To deny.
Motion to deny.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comments? All right, very good. Ms. Graham, if you would.
Thank you. Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Wild?
No.
Councilmember Guthrie?
Aye.
Councilmember Paul Harrison?
Aye.
Mayor McDonald?
Aye. Okay, moving right along. This is where we brought decision item number 6 up to this plat. And I'll go ahead and get us started here. Want to do a little something different than what we might have done, and want to kind of give the people in the room and people that might be watching online a clear understanding of how the Maitland Civic Center kind of came into being. And we've got, this is in the form of a PDF that I guess we've had, Sharon, for what, 9 or 10 months? That, yeah, going back from January, I guess, of this year. And just a brief, okay, maybe not so brief, but a recitation of the facts here, and I'm going to try to do this as factually as I possibly can. Right, Councilman? Okay. Now, on the page number 1, and all of you have copies of this here in front of you. Funds were provided to the city to purchase land for the recreation center. And that was in September 20th of 1958. Mr. George Morrison donated securities that when liquidated became $22,000 to the city for the purchase of land adjoining the library specifically for a recreation center. Now page 2 outlines a September 20th, 1958 council meeting minutes that echo essentially the purchase of the property. Because you can imagine that property was what is now the current Civic Center property was available for sale. So Councilman Newkirk moved that the town of Lake Maitland accept 360 shares of U.S. Fidelity Guarantee stock as a gift from Mr. Morrison, which generated $22,851.04 for the purpose of purchasing the Williams property and establishing a recreational center, in caps, for the citizens of the town of Lake Maitland to be governed by the council. Seconded by Councilman Parker and carried by ayes. Now, there is more to these minutes, but these are, again, you folks will all be able to, should you like, to be able to get copies of what I'm reading from here. Okay? Now going to page 3. The letter from the Morrison family from February 12th, 1963. The family of Judge George Morrison becomes aware of the city's desire to sell the property, purchased with the gift from Mr. Morrison to a private party. Since Mr. Morrison specifically provided the funds for a city-run recreation center, the Morrisons request that a right of reverter be included so that the property or funds be used for a recreation center. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to find in any minutes why the city felt it necessary to sell the land to the Civic Center rather than this newly formed Civic Center Association, rather than develop the recreation center itself. But the letter alludes to the fact that perhaps that was stated, second sentence of the third paragraph in the letter. We just don't know. At page 4 was a letter from the city's attorney at the time, the Honorable Richard Trisman, another Cliff knows him, outlining what the specific
requests were from, as far as the purchase of the Williams property, adjoining the library on the south, for the purposes of establishing a recreational center for the citizens of the city, of the town of Lake Maitland, to be governed by the council. Now, it does say that if conditions are such that the private corporation is better able than the city to govern the development of the property as a recreational center, Mr. and Mrs. Morrison will not oppose the sale. But they, again, clarified that they wanted this reversionary clause included in the conveyance. And going on to, again, I'm trying to save everybody some time here, trying to summarize, and Cliff, keep me straight with this. I'm sure that you realize Mr. and Ms. Morrison are most anxious that the wishes of their late father for a recreational center for the citizens of the town be fulfilled in the shortest time possible. It's indeed unfortunate that Mr. Morrison did not live to see the development he envisioned in 1958 when he made his very generous gift. We trust that the town council will see that the project is carried forward speedily and properly. Let's move forward to February 14th, Valentine's Day in 1963. There's a special meeting that was held by the city council regarding the option to purchase. Now, there doesn't appear to be much information here, although you can see on page 7, there were some minutes, and minutes in those days were a tad more brief than they might be today. Of course, that would be if you left it up to me tonight. So, there was a meeting there. There was no real information that came from that as to what the motivations by that council may have been. Now, the very next day, the outlines, the February 15th, 1963, outlines the option purchase approval. Includes resolution and option and executed option to purchase. Now we do have that. There's a little more straightforward here. A resolution authorizing an option to purchase land agreement with the Maitland Civic Center Incorporated was read by Councilman Callies. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure he's a nice man. Now, the option to purchase a complete description of property in terms of payment are attached to these minutes. Was read by Councilman Booker. The option gives the optionee the privilege of purchasing for the purchase price of $19,400. This property solely to be used and maintained for the nonprofit purposes of promoting the educational, civic, charitable, health, recreational, and moral interest of the residents of the city of Maitland, Florida. It was moved by the councilman and seconded by Councilman Booker, and the resolution was adopted with corrections noted. Motion carried unanimously. That was February 15th of 1963. Now, page 10, maybe you're looking at it, is the resolution authorizing the option purchase land agreement with the Maitland Civic Center, a Florida not-for-profit corporation. Again, I won't read with this, although it's interesting reading. There was a highlighted area of it that refers to the purpose of this association shall be to promote the educational, civic, health, recreational, and moral interest of the residents of the city of Maitland, including the architectural planning and construction of segment of a civic center to serve such purposes. They are in my reading of this, those are 6 very inclusive missions. That, yes, that it is desirable and to the best interest and advantage of the city of Maitland and the citizens of the city to sell that hereinafter described land to the Maitland Civic Center, Inc. So, going on to page 11. Again, there is more here that clarifies some of these questions. And gives the city council, because in this case, the city council agreed, and I'll get to that in a minute. This resolution shall become effective immediately upon its passage. This is the 15th day of February 1963, signed by Mayor Joe Jackson. Now, the option to purchase begins on page 13. This lays out a purchase price of $19,400. The option is purchased for the sum of $100, and that was received from Maitland Civic Center, Inc. On that same day, February 15th of 1963. Now, going further, do we have any way to show this on the screen? Sure.
I can,
If we, so folks might be able to.
I can try to pull it up. I don't know if they're going to be able to read it.
I understand. Okay, now, so this is where it becomes at the clause 1 or 2A. It's quite specific. This property is deeded to the grantee named herein, which is the Maitland Civic Center Association, to be used and maintained for the nonprofit purposes of promoting the educational, civic, charitable, health, recreational, and moral interest of the residents of the city of Maitland, Florida, including the architectural planning and construction of a civic center building or buildings to serve these purposes. And the grantor herein reserves unto itself and its legal successors all right of reversion in and to said property in the event of the discontinuance of the use of said property for these purposes and its maintenance as such. Now, this right of reversion retained herein shall be subject to the lien of the construction mortgage that was put into place the following year. And the Civic Center folks in those days did a great job of building a building in 1965. Now, again, I'm trying to put this in context for everyone, so because I know that there are have been misconceptions about what the facts appear to be. Okay. Okay, here we go. That it has available funds to construct a civic center building of an estimated cost of $60,000 of our similar design to plans prepared by Joseph M. Shafalo. Is that pronounced right? I don't know. Shafalo, dated January 22nd, 1963. That it has the sum of $30,000 in cash collected from its members and by donations to be used for the construction of that civic center building. Now, the optionee will pay the purchase price of that land by paying $1,000 paid to the city of Maitland in cash. And the city of Maitland held a promissory note for $18,400. That was to be held at 4% annum for a period of 20 equal payments over 20 years, equal annual payments. Those annual payments were $920 a year, plus interest with the first payment being made thereon, so forth and so on. Fairly straightforward stuff. Okay. That continues on through page 16. And the privilege of the purchase terminates on December 30th, 1963. move on to page 70. That is simply a legal description of the subject property, the proposed Maitland Civic Center property that was included in the transaction. Now, the page 18 becomes the warranty deed itself with the reversionary language on page 2, paragraph A. When I say page 2, paragraph A, that is our page 20. Okay? That grants the city the right of reversion. That should the aforementioned missions not be continued, that the all rights of reversion in and to said property in the event of discontinuance in its maintenance and its purposes as such. And subordinates this reversionary clause to the construction agreement, the construction loan agreement that was done the following year. Okay. Moving on to page 21. Mayor Jackson executed a document here that was recorded in an OR book 1347 and page number 566 of the Orange County Records that stipulates the things that I just outlined. Nothing terribly out of the ordinary about this, except for the reversionary clause. Okay? Now, the mortgage deed, because the city was holding a mortgage for the Civic Center Association. Now, the mortgage deed is page 23 and 4. Again, $18,000, 4%, 20 years, with $920 a year annual payments. That I was having a moment with Maria today. This was executed by the president of the Civic Center Association in those days, a fellow named Slade Godley. Didn't know him. But obviously knew what he was doing. Now, on page 26, a quitclaim deed was executed in August 20th of 1964, correcting the legal description that incorporates the conditions and rights of reversion into the deed. And that copy of that quitclaim deed is on page 27. And blessedly, on the last page, 28, continues on the last page of that quitclaim deed. Now, that, again, Councilman Guthrie and Councilman Paul Harrison weren't here when we did this back in January and February. But establishing a clear baseline of what the facts truly are. And I asked our city attorney, Cliff, that I misconstrued any part of that?
No, sir.
Misrepresented any of it?
I have been through all of those same documents, and you actually didn't miss a beat of what was in them. So in terms of reciting what's there, that is accurate.
Well, thank you, sir. I wanted to try to go through that recitation of what the facts really are. And this right of reversion clause, these deed restricted missions that have left this, and I can't help but believe, while we don't seem to have any great detailed information as to why the city council of the city or town of Maitland, town of Lake Maitland at the time, wasn't willing or interested in building and maintaining and managing a recreation center themselves, we do not know. Can only speculate. But we do know that that they left these provisions in place and I'm led to believe by the council that these clauses, these reversionary clauses, deed restrictions are still valid, even from 1964. So as a foundational understanding of what brings me again to want to bring this proposition to you folks here in council. I know we had an opportunity to talk about this back in January of this year, and it's helped, I believe, to trigger some broader conversations that seem to have us headed in the right direction from a momentum standpoint about a community facility on Quinstrong Park, which is terrific. That inertia has been broken, and the fact that we want to continue with that discussion and have an opportunity for the public to weigh in on what sorts of level of service that they might want to have with a community facility in the city. We don't have the benefit of knowing that yet. We do know and have agreed, I think, as a council and other folks as well, that maybe our existing library has physically seen its best days. And so I think as a council, we find ourselves believing that we might actually deserve a new facility, but we just don't know what that new facility might need to include. What else does the city want to do? Want to have the opportunity to do? What other services could the city provide that we don't even know about yet? So I'm looking forward to beginning that public input process on what we have called a library, but I would much more prefer to think of it as a community facility. Because we don't know. We just don't know. I only know what I think, and I understand some of what you folks like. But I want to hear. And have people the opportunity to brainstorm on ideas that might be able to be brought back to the five of us to begin to prioritize and see what it is that we want to do. I'm not, I'm going to go ahead and address this now. This is not, nor has it ever been, a personal issue with me. Ever. This wasn't my dream. This was Dave Telmeck's dream 20 years ago. This just makes sense. You got an unduplicatable location, and it has been managed and operated admirably throughout its time. I don't know that any of us can conscionably say that it provides all of the utility that the citizens of the city of Maitland might want to see provided today. Or, again, that Christopher or Leona want to be able to have provided for them 20 years from now. So, I'll stop. Y'all are tired of hearing my voice already. Any thoughts on the resolution as it's drawn?
I just have a quick question. So
Yes.
we spent a considerable amount of time, and we had consultants come in and do a lot of research. And after a lot of discussion, we agreed on Quinstrong Park as the site of a new library. So now you're kind of tossing that and saying we're going to start over?
Not at all.
Well, that's kind of what I mean. So we're still going through with putting the library at Quinstrong Park, and we're going to find some other use for this property?
Well, Mike, if I could ask you this question, and I don't know that either one of us have an answer. What is it that the community wants, whether it's at Quinstrong Or anywhere else.
So you're saying that the library is no longer slated for Queenstone Park, but that's still up for discussion?
I think well,
It's kind of,
Mike,
that's what, it seems to be what you're saying, but if I'm not hearing it right, and somebody else heard something different, so I'm kind of wondering what the whole process we've been through in arriving at Queenstone Park with the library, and you voted for it as well, and we went through all the reasons why. And then once we had made the decision on where the library would be located, we would go out in the community and had input on what people wanted to see in the library. And that's, if I'm misunderstanding that was the process we laid out, then somebody correct me, because that seems to be what we did. And so to kind of all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, say, no, never mind, we're going to open everything up again. And I appreciate the history lesson. I don't see where it changes much. To be honest, putting this on the agenda, after the agenda has been released to the public, and it's kind of the third time that we send the agenda out to the public, and then we come back, 3 or 4 days later and throw this on it. That just doesn't seem like the Maitland form of government. That doesn't seem open and transparent. And now suddenly, negate a decision that I believe we unanimously voted on to revisit where we want to put the library, and I just don't see it. I don't see why the history lesson, as interesting as it was, justifies that. I don't see where we're coming up with God knows how much money to pull this off.
that was right there in the resolution.
So I mean, we're going to take what, 500,000 at a minimum, and a maximum of who knows how much if we go through the condemnation courts and they put up a vigorous defense, and suddenly 500,000 becomes twice that. So is that money also come out of fund balance? Is that a higher priority than the sidewalks we've already approved, than the undergrounding of utilities that we've had to put on hold, that all these other projects we've had to put on hold? So suddenly these get kind of shoved to the side, and suddenly this becomes a priority at an undetermined cost. I just don't see where you're going there. This just doesn't make sense to me. To me, we're derailing what I think we were on track to present a very desirable library project to the residents at a very good price. And I think that would have been a good sell. I think we could have gotten behind that and sold that. The library board voted unanimously for that site. And we were sort of on our way to at last getting a new library and getting out of that old building that's falling apart. Now we're going to just buy another old building that's falling apart. So I think that we're on a good path with building the library. I think that when you're gone and when they're gone, I think down the road, cooler heads will come together and figure out what to do with that civic center. And but now, given the current situation, given the fact that their revenues have fallen off the cliff, they're not renting out the facility. So we're gonna take that over, and then we're gonna pay to maintain something that's not bringing in any revenue. I mean, when somebody hit the Art and History Center with a truck, we gotta pay for it. When the library roof leaks, we gotta pay for it. When their building leaks, they gotta pay for it. And why we would want to take that on when we have nothing, no plan of what to do with the property, when we've already decided the library wouldn't be built there. So I'll defer to other members of council now.
If it would help any of you to understand, Sharon, you want to address how this agenda item came to be on the agenda tonight?
Well, from my perspective, we had finished the agenda, we sent out the draft agenda on Tuesday. So our deadline is Tuesday at 4 o'clock. We sent out the draft agenda to the council members, to staff. Then we finalized the agenda and I went to lunch. And then I came back and Maria had this item.
This wasn't 3 or 4 days later.
No, but it was after what we consider the draft agenda that goes out to the council.
Right, and that deadline
says,
is
this is what's
4
on
p.m.
here.
On Wednesday?
Right, but it says this is what's on here, and we can pull things off, but we don't add things on there to surprise you unless it's an emergency. So, I mean, that's been our practice is what you see, we might have to take stuff off if you don't feel like they're ready, but we don't, the staff, put anything else on there. You have the right to add whatever you want until it goes out.
I don't think it's worth just to be fair, I don't think it's worth, I appreciate everyone's saying, I don't think it's worth the mechanics of the agenda. So back to the one thing I don't want this to become though is a discussion on the library, because I don't think they're one and the same, in my opinion. I think what we decided on the library side of this was that there were 3 options, 3 sites identified. We don't yet know what the public wants. We really are. The most important step is the one about to come, which is feedback from the public to get an idea of what's going to be the future of the library. And so I think what we voted on was that of the 3 sites, the one that makes the most sense at the time, given what we expect, was Quinstrong Park. But knowing that we really want to get the feedback from the public, and so I think that's where we are now and moving forward. To me, this is a different issue that I think the mayor, that Dale, you're bringing up here, and it's not about the library. So I don't want to focus, because we've gone through so much with the library. I don't want to spend the time, and I appreciate your comments, Mike, because I think what you're saying is, are we revisiting it? And I think we should not revisit that tonight. I think it should be its own discussion, knowing that, though, you're right, Mike, we are taking on responsibility with the library, and that's going to be a commitment wherever it goes.
Yeah.
So I understand what Mike's saying, but I don't think we should talk too much tonight about the library, because to me, this is a different issue, and one that's clearly something, Dale, that you believe in, and you brought it up several times, and I mean, I think the question is, right now, is now the time to do this, and obviously there's the feedback on what the community wants is still upcoming, so.
Yeah, we don't know. Any other thoughts before we go to the public? Vance? Lindsay, any thoughts?
I'm going to reserve my comments for after the public has had their opportunity to speak.
You can have them both ways if you want.
I'm okay.
But no, I would agree with Vice Mayor Wild. I do see these as 2 entirely separate issues. And truly, even our consultant who had gone through the process to talk about relative merits of different sites, Civic Center site was never a choice. But we didn't own it. We don't own it. So there's a certain fallacy to that analysis. Now, those of you that would like to address this item, this specific item on the agenda,
if you would, speak at the lectern to my left. And those people that would like to speak, the next person that would like to speak, if they might, stand over by the wall, socially distanced, of course, and be in the on-deck circle, so that we can kind of get started with the process. All right? Now's the time.
Well, this is going to be tough. The podium is far enough away where I can't see it with my near vision. Too close from my far distant glasses. So I'll try and stumble through this, and if I say something silly, it's just that I read it.
No, I'll say the silly stuff. I'm now, since you can't see, I'm 6'2". So.
Deb Reppiman. I live at 1760 Thunderbird Trail. I think maybe I planted some kind of seed that when I was talking with a couple of people, maybe that caused this issue to be thought about again. But I'll go ahead and go with what I've got, and then maybe it'll make more sense as we go along. So here we go. Good evening, members of the council and citizens in the audience. Most of the audience people know me as a fair-minded, honest, truthful person. Please listen to a truth I only recently got my attention caught, so I understood it. 12 years ago, I asked and was granted the opportunity of establishing a beautification committee to improve the look of our city. The committee painted the wall along Horatio, planted the frontage of the used car lot, painted and revegetated the chamber building, planted trees in the city, cleared the railroad tracks near the library, painted inside the library and replanted the atrium area, and several other projects. A truth I held to be true was that paint and planting can change an area that has been ignored greatly. Yes, it does help. But sometimes an area can be painted and replanted, and only a few people notice what's happened or take note of it. All the loving attention doesn't improve an area enough, though, that others seem to notice the difference, and it would be like putting a Band-Aid on a small cut. It's hidden. That's all it is. It took me a long, long time to realize that, yes, we can look at our city, and we can say, you know, if we only paint that, that'll look better. If we only do this, we widen the sidewalk, it'll make everything look much, much better. The Winn-Dixie wasn't pretty inside nor outside. The car lot on the main four corners is pretty. Pretty ugly, low-class one. The chamber didn't draw more members after our efforts to paint the building and add plantings around the outside of the building. The library didn't grow bigger after all of the painting, planting, cleaning, dusting that we did to it. So here's the truth. Our town is stuck in the 50s. We are a city of old houses, old businesses, old streets designs, old narrow sidewalks, a lack of crossing lights at important areas like the main intersection. We have old people, old ideas, old buildings. No amount of love, paint, or plants can improve our city's image. Our city can be plain, old, boring, with little happening on most Saturday nights, when the biggest draw is the ice cream store, one that can be assured that we are stuck in the 50s if we're going for ice cream on Saturday night. I love the ice cream, but where does one go when the ice cream is eaten? We've got to go home. Tonight, the issue is the Civic Center, an old building in a high visibility area of our city on Lake Road. Here are some truthful facts. It's a 1950s building that can be improved by a bulldozer only. ADA requirements make it silly to improve otherwise. Number two, if I close my eyes and dream a bit, I can envision a new building representing the main building of the cultural corridor. Youth, teens, adults, and old people can use it. There could be a teaching of music, art, dance, plays. All ages could use it. Three, we need a south anchor for our downtown. It could be a great high visibility anchor. At the present time, I don't know what that word is. The draw at the Civic Center, to the best of my knowledge, is only a few people, maybe 50 people for an activity. I don't know.
It's time, we kind of need to wrap it up.
Okay, the library can draw 100, and A&H can draw well over 50. A playhouse could draw people every evening. Put the redo ideas away and start dreaming of places for all of our citizens and visitors who are drawn to Maitland to have a good time. So the truth is that we need to encourage new buildings that cater to the 17,000 people living here, not to a small group of people in an old building.
Thank you again. News and our on deck circle. Thank you, Ms. Bell.
Okay.
I'm laughing with you, Joanne.
Joanne Snodgrass Minty, 1771 Chinook Trail. What in the world? I thought I heard it all, but I was wrong. In the past several days, I became aware of what the resolution to acquire property is all about. Initially speechless, I had found my voice, but the disbelief still lingers. I read the resolution. I read all the whereases. The timing is something I still can't get. Parking to the library. I attended 2 meetings concerning the site project in the library. What I took from the last meeting was Clint Strong is the favorable site, with the Civic Center being the last choice. Workshops were to follow up as to what part of Clint Strong would be utilized for the library parking, referred to as the north and south part. We have not had one workshop, not one. How is it that the Civic Center is so strategic to this plan when there is no plan? Now a vote is being called for tonight, just days after being announced, to acquire the Civic Center using parking as part of the catalyst for this endeavor. Hasn't the Civic Center continued for the years to work with the city on when occasion arose concerning the need for extra parking spaces? It's also my understanding that out of 365 days last year, less than 20 days affected an issue of parking. And here we are with this resolution. Is everyone still aware that in 2017, the city negotiated and contracted for an extension of Independence Lane through to George? Not done. We've got weeds and trash accumulating there. Yet, now there is money, projected at $500,000 to set aside for purchase of the Civic Center and possible litigation. Even writing the phrase, shall retain legal counsel to commence eminent domain, is this appropriate language this council wants to use against the residents of this city at this time when there has not been public input on this issue? And the timeline, executed purchase and contract by November 16th, closing by December 15th. If not agreed upon and signed by the November 8th legal counsel to be obtained immediately, why is there such a hurry on something so monumental? In the present state of a pandemic-driven global economy resulting in hard times for millions of people, is that not enough of a red flag for this kind of costly and divisive move from the city now? Please explore this at greater length. Including workshops, excuse me, I'm talking too fast and I can't read. And greater deliberation on your part and the residents of this people called Maitland. This action to acquire the Civic Center does not in any way, to me, seem prudent or wise at this time. Let's finish Independence Lane. Let's get an approved plan for the library. You had a survey which we paid for. You made a choice. Win strong. Please focus on that project. Regardless, I do appreciate your service to the city, as I can only imagine the time, effort, and personal research you have to do. However, I fervently oppose this action at this time on all levels, especially for all the stated reasons for this acquisition. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Who's next?
My name is Ed Hamden. I live at 604 South Lake Cecilia Drive. And although I'm a member of the board of the Maitland Civic Center, I'm actually here tonight in my capacity as a private citizen and on behalf of Dan Wallace, my friend and associate who lives in Lake Faith. And he has asked if I would read into the record a series of email letters he sent to the city council over the past few months with regard to this issue. He's done so succinctly, and I will read them to you with your indulgence. They are
You'll
my
always see
sentiments as
Mr.
well.
Wallace's emails.
Just give us the gist of them, I'd be happy, yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Mike.
I wouldn't mind just getting the gist of them rather than read all of them,
I think we may have received them,
To be brief, as I say, Dan has incorporated thoughts which are coincide with my sentiments as well. So they are his words, but my sentiments. His first email was written in February 23 of this year, when both Bev and John Lowndes were on the city council. The issue first came up. Dear sirs and madam, I am writing in opposition to the motion to untable the resolution to acquire the Maitland Civic Center property and in opposition to the underlying resolution. The argument that the health, safety, and welfare of the community will be endangered somehow if the city does not acquire the property is specious. There is adequate parking for library patrons in the existing library parking lot and adjacent to Queenstone Park. Just as there is adequate parking within walking distance to Orlando's Lake Eola Park, there is adequate parking within walking distance to Lake Lily Park. We have a walkable downtown, and citizens are accustomed to walking to the library in Lake Lily. The expansion of on-site parking for library and park activities may have the effect of increasing vehicular traffic. This is the punchline. The city doesn't need to own another building, and it doesn't need to be in the event venue rental business. If the real reason for acquiring the property is to expand the library, wouldn't it make sense to study the alternatives before proceeding with this resolution? In short, this seems like an unnecessary land grab. I believe there's no valid reason to approve the resolution at this time. In August of this year, he wrote again to the city council, Dear sirs and madam, I am writing a second time in opposition to the motion. The basis for the resolution is that the Civic Center is not living up to its nonprofit purposes by, quote, routinely prohibiting the use of its parking by the residents of the city of Maitland. This is not the case. If you're a business owner and your customers rely on using your parking lot while at your business, do you not have the right to prohibit non-customer use of your parking lot? The library lot is posted library parking only. The nearby city-owned 301 South Maitland Avenue lot is posted tow-away zone, as are parking lots of numerous other businesses, both for-profit and not-for-profit, along Maitland Avenue and within the city. Why should the Civic Center be condemned for ensuring adequate parking to its patrons? The implication that the Civic Center does not live up to the nonprofit purpose stated in the resolution is not fair. There is no other organization in the community with the facilities to provide low-cost / no-cost meeting space of that size for the public good. The members of the Civic Center have routinely hosted Meet the Candidate forums, community information presentations, political candidate rallies, Veterans Day and other commemorations, exercise and education classes, and numerous other events including reunions, parties, and wedding receptions. Community-minded civic organizations regularly use the facilities for the meeting. A city takeover of the city property will displace all these organizations and eliminate the most versatile and affordable meeting space in the city. You could argue the new public library will provide that space and fill the need. Operating an event meeting space facility requires an ongoing financial commitment, whether or not it is affiliated with the library. Given growing competition within city departments for limited financial resources and the likelihood of future increased operating costs, does it make sense for the taxpaying public to assume the additional financial responsibilities of running an event venue that is currently being fulfilled by an existing private organization? Finally, is there some ulterior motive behind this resolution? Prudence and common sense would dictate that council analyze, discuss, and obtain public input on the 3 potential sites in the HCI report, and then decide on the site before considering this resolution. Well, we know that the Kingston site has since been chosen.
Let's wrap it up then.
The last email was sent just a few days ago to all of you at City Council.
Let's please wrap it up now, Ed.
I will. Dear sirs and madam, once again I'm writing in opposition. This is the 4th time the resolution has been placed on the agenda for your consideration. It was tabled twice, withdrawn once.
There are other people that would like to speak, Ed.
I understand. If I may summarize here. As we've said, the ACI and the City Council has voted on the library site. The secondary reason for the resolution is the lack of sufficient on-site parking for the library. This is important. The resolution alleges the City Council Civic Center routinely prohibits the use of its parking by the residents of Maitland. This is a false argument. In the Civic Center's letter to council,
your time's up.
only on
Now.
occasions is the
Thank
Civic
you.
Center building booked with functions
next?
requiring the use of our whole lot. I think,
Please, Ed.
want that argument.
Please, Ed.
This is like a presidential debate.
So, in summary, he concludes again, this seems like an unnecessary land grab. I believe there's no valid reason for it.
I think you had mentioned that earlier.
In summary, I think that he questions, as do I, the method by which this is being brought to council, the motivation behind it, and most of all, the merit of the city embarking on taking over a site with no plans for its use and no ability to carry out current activities at the city center.
Good to finally hear you hear your own thoughts for a change, Ed. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening, Johnny Warner, 160 West Cottage Drive. I've been asked by another resident to read an email because she couldn't be here tonight. She is Dr. Gloria Picard, 719 Terra Place, Maitland, Florida. I am unequivocally opposed to any acquisition of the property building
We've all received
or parking lots of the Maitland Civic Center,
but we have not.
also known as the venue of the city of Maitland, for any purposes whatsoever, including the construction and development of a new library. Also, with the pending general election, COVID-19 pandemic, environmental catastrophes, raging hurricanes, fires, and the civil unrest in our nation, to engage in these discussions now is uncomfortable and unwarranted. Our attention should be on the economic stability and safety of our citizens, schools, and first responders. To hold this meeting indoors at this time to address this issue is inconsiderate and shameful. We can and much do better. Stop this takeover now. Dr. Gloria Burkhardt.
All right, thank you, John. She felt comfortable sending you. How are you?
Talk to me?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm fine. The last time I saw you, first of all, I'm Carolyn Schaefer. Good evening, I'm Carolyn Schaefer. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and all of the elected officials in Maitland, ladies and gentlemen. The last time I saw you, this resolution to have the Maitland Civic Center change, I told you it was a good idea, and you looked at me, you said it's never too late to bring it up. You have an ulterior motive, and I don't know what it is, and you should be ashamed of yourself. You want this for some reason, I can't figure it out. Anyway, I'm also known as the mayor of Cecilia Avenue, by the way. So we have two mayors, one elected by the citizens and one by my street. I'm very proud of that. They come to me for all kinds of advice. I've been a resident of at the very same street for nearly 48 years, and I've been privileged to be able to be a member of the Venue of the Lake, also known as the Maitland Civic Center. I attended Jazzercise and for many years and was a member of the Maitland Women's Club. I'm here to let you know that I'm 100% against the resolution to acquire property that Mayor McDonald put forth late in the day on Wednesday. First of all, the timing of this calculated move by the mayor presents itself where there's a pandemic going on and does not make any sense whatsoever. A lot of the residents of Maitland are enjoying their golden years and do not travel out at night, and some even have issues with their health that prevent them from coming out tonight. And I spoke with a couple of them that couldn't come, they've got cancer, etc., and couldn't be here. So it is my understanding that the city has said that the library could be placed in or on the Queen Strong area, and that should alleviate the problem with the library and the fact that it's outgrowing its space. So, what is wrong with this picture, one might say? Why is Mayor McDonald wanting to have the library constructed where the venue on the lake is situated? We can't figure it out. The next thing I do not understand is where the amount of $250,000 for a piece of land that's on the lake, we know that's worth a lot more, another $250,000 for legal, and I can tell you this, that we will rouse the people to get legal help to fight the city. So it's going to cost you a hell of a lot more than $250,000. And what is my understanding, I'm sorry, we need to hang on to all the money in the reserve just in case something really big comes along, and it could. If the reserves go down a lot, then would bring about the dreaded words, taxes are going up. Oh, by the way, we're going to fight this move, as I said, with every fiber in our being. I'm requesting that all the elected officials of Maitland vote against this. Maybe even Mayor McDonald would even consider changing his mind on this too. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Who'd like to speak next?
Jim Bannico, 725 North Lake Civilian Drive. Mayor, I really appreciate the history that you've given us, and it's quite interesting. It would have been nice if we had that maybe a couple of weeks before the meeting, and I mean, I know that we don't want to dwell on this idea of having been here 3 times for the same thing, but the thing that really is kind of hurts us is that 3 times, not only have we come, but 3 times we've been blindsided. And, that's not the way the city works or is supposed to work. So, maybe we can all work on that a little bit and accomplish more for the best interest of the city. But again, I won't dwell on that. You've heard it, and I won't say anything. And I want you to please be reminded that the Civic Center is a charitable, nonprofit 501c3 corporation owned by the community and legally committed to community service, which it has been providing without cost to the city since it was purchased 66 years ago from the city for its then market value. It was not a gift. The city has not contributed any money towards acquisition, construction, operation, or any other purpose for all of these years. Actually, the Civic Center pays the city significant funds for drainage, drainage use for the, what am I trying to say? Stormwater drainage across the parking lot. Contrary to the wrongful accusation contained in the proposed resolution, is routinely made available to Maitland residents for library parking as well as other purposes. In addition, the Civic Center routinely makes its facilities available to the city for its use with little or no cost. So now the proposal to spend $500,000 to acquire property already owned by the community through this nonprofit corporation. Although the green sheet says the financial impact is not applicable. In fact, we do not know what the cost will be because we've not been allowed to know the use. However, we can anticipate that the cost to the city will not only include an unbilled amount for renovation and reconstruction, but also staffing, ongoing operating costs, including utilities, maintenance and repairs, marketing and rentals, all for a service which is now provided by the community, for the community, at no cost to the city. I urge the City Council to stop these strong-arm, nonsensical tactics now, because if you choose to proceed, it's going to be a long, arduous, unpleasant road, and no one will be the winner. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. It's Renee.
Good evening. My name is Renee Charland, 201 West Horatio Avenue. I'm here tonight as the president of the Maitland Civic Center, also known as Venue on the Lake, and I'm also here as a very concerned resident of the city of Maitland. 5 years ago, part of celebrating the venue's 50th anniversary of serving the Maitland community, a general plan for serving the community over the next 50 years was established. A first phase of this plan was modernizing and upgrading the venue's physical plant. I think a number of the people here that are talking about us being old and decrepit haven't been to the building in the last few weeks. About 80% of this first phase has recently been completed. We will need to complete the exterior. Since 2013, we've raised over $200,000, not to mention in-kind and material donations, to make those improvements, or these improvements. We feel that these improvements will only enhance the services we offer the community. These donations came from members and friends. The city taxpayers were spared these expenses. Also, we took an annual budget of roughly $165,000 to the 2021 budget we adopted in January for over $440,000. I think that's something to be proud of. Then COVID-19 hit. We have tightened our belt. We have a plan. Again, the city taxpayers are spared. The venue, from its beginning in the early 60s, was all about our community. It all started with pancake breakfasts, spaghetti dinners, and community fairs. The stage was the site of many plays and musical presentations. Many citizens have enjoyed dances and galas, weddings, anniversaries, bar and bat mitzvahs. We have celebrated the National Day of Prayer and Veterans Day events, and for over 44 years, we have worked with the Rotary to present the Maitland Rotary Art Festival, one of the most successful community events in our area. We are also the home to several nonprofit organizations like the Maitland Women's Club, Men's Club, and several others. Now with our improvements, we have even bigger plans. A quarterly dinner entertainment series. After the first of the year, a special event is being planned to reintroduce the restaurants of our community. We also feel that there is a special need due to COVID-19 to provide space to businesses in the community to be able to meet. Due to social distancing, many cannot use their own conference rooms. We can be your conference room. And think about weddings and other celebrations. What if one could live stream their event to family and guests in other parts of the country? We are currently working with some of the most talented consultants in Central Florida to help us bring all this about. Another important subject we are tackling is our succession plan for continuing leadership. We are pleased that we are attracting younger set to join the venue and be part of our future. Yes, we have some big plans. Again, we are not asking the city for money to make it happen. The venue's board of directors, all volunteers by the way, would like to again reach out to the members of council to sit down with us and be part of planning and implementing ways that we can work together for the betterment of Maitland. We believe that working with the city, we together can provide even more enhanced services and activities that will be part of defining Maitland as an exceptional place to live, work, and enjoy life. So we ask that you vote no to the resolution to acquire our property. I have a copy of my comments that I would like to have brought into the record. Should I bring it to you or give it to Ken?
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, Council. Mr. Mayor. I'm the former mayor, as you probably know, of the city. And when I finished my service here, which I greatly was very excited about doing and have cherished, I wanted to continue to serve the city. So I looked for something that I could do to continue that service. And the Maitland Civic Center graciously gave me that opportunity. And I'm on the board, and I've been on that board for, I guess, 3 or 4 years now. And in that time, we have completely renovated that Civic Center. On the interior, it is now beautiful. It's a beautiful place to be. And a lot of the people that come there, some that rent the place so we can pay our employees, and many that come there to just use our facility because we give it to them for no cost for their service, for their different things. They've really seen the difference in what we've done with it. Renee was the one that started it off. She became the president, and she has assembled a board that I am honored to be a part of. A number of very successful business people, former council people, are all on this board, and we're all dedicated, volunteering our time. And it's quite a bit of time that we spend to do this, to make sure that it operates properly, and that it's, because it's volunteer, it's more affordable. So it makes it work, so we can, let out space for people at no cost, because that's what it's about. And Mayor, you have said that. We are here to serve the city. We are also here to listen to the council. We'd like to meet with the council. We would like to sit down with the council and talk about ways that we could do better, that we could work together to do better for our citizens. I think it's extremely important that the more we can do for our citizens in the city of Maitland, the better it is. And our whole board is very much dedicated to achieving that goal. So I would ask you that we basically not approve this resolution and set up a meeting so that we can all get together and start talking about what we can do together as our citizens, because you're all citizens and we're all citizens. And so we want to make it better. And, you know, to have your input and your help would be greatly appreciated. And we would really look forward to working with you all to achieve that goal. So I would ask you to vote down this resolution, and let's get started with some positive things so we can get going and do more things and have more programs for our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Who else would like to speak? Elizabeth.
I'm Elizabeth, I'm in Bondon, and I live at 2315 Mohawk Trail, just a little bit, in Maitland. And I did not realize this meeting was happening until Justin Brownlee announced it on Facebook, which I'm grateful for. So I did my notes on my phone. I apologize, and have to zoom some more. So my family has resided here since the mid-1970s, and so much has changed since I was spotted. Not all that change was good. I don't know if you guys remember these places, but I really miss Arthur Treacher's, Goody Golf, and Goodies. And I'm bitter about that. There are some things that have remained constant. Wilson's Barbershop, Kathy Stubbs, our beloved library, and the Maitland Civic Center. Now, Pastor Justin, he urged people to come up, write you emails, and talk if we opposed this resolution because of the historic value of the Civic Center. Its small town feel. He cited as an example of historic value the fact that Leonardo DiCaprio recently used the site, and I'm sure the members here can affirm to that, to film for his 50s-based project. Well, I checked with some friends in the film industry. That was interesting. And Pastor Brown was correct, they did. The location scout was looking for a place that was, let me read this so I get the exact words, old, dated, antiquated, and ugly.
That's not true.
And I hate to say it, but it is. And it's the one thing that I thought that our leaders would have changed by now. I mean, 45 years, and it's still there. 45 years, the library is still there, and it does need a new building, and I'm thrilled that you're considering it. I am dismayed to hear that the decision to put it at Quinn Straw Park seems to have cemented. I appreciate Commissioner Wild saying it has not, because that, knowing the public and the community at large has really been surveyed on that. And I look around this room, and I heard the names that were coming up here to speak, and you are all names that I grew up with. And I want to say thank you for your service. Thank you for creating a community that, I mean, I am surprised at anyone that I came back to. I lived far away, my parents stayed. I never thought I would come back to Maitland and raise kids, and as I thought about it, and I lived in D.C., I was like, I'm not raising kids here, I'm going back home. And it is a wonderful community. But as Ms. Schaefer said, many of our residents, many here are in their golden years. They are retired. I appreciate you doing so much with your volunteer work. But the voices in this room are not representative of the people I know. And I want you all to know that I'm a middle-aged woman. And I'm not representative of the people that are younger than me. And I'm not representative of our children. And that's what I would encourage all of us to think about. The Civic Center is outdated. And yes, I have been there in the past 6 months, not in the past few weeks because of COVID. It's not living up to its chartered obligation and purpose. It is a disappointment. And I hear that you want to serve the community, and I appreciate that. And I hear that you all also want to be diligent and mindful of our resources and serve the community. The only way you can serve the community is if you go and ask the community what we want. Do we want to have our center, our library, or whatever it's going to be on Lake Lily? Do we want it on Quinn Straw Park? What do we want? Because the Civic Center was created to serve Maitland. So I ask you to remember that when you meet, remember that when you discuss, and figure out the best way to serve Maitland is to ask Maitland what it wants. We need to get out of our echo chambers and engage. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Liz.
And it's still not goodies back.
All right, good evening. My name is Matt Charlan. Live at moved in 1241 North Lakes Lake Drive. This is kind of a disappointing agenda item. It just seems like we're missing such an awesome opportunity, especially during COVID. It feels like City Council should be directing its effort towards connectivity to its citizens. I struggled to try to find the online representation for this meeting, could not find where to go. I wish we were able to have more message boards and keep track of what we really want. You know, my wife and I, we're millennials, we moved in, we're excited to live in Maitland. This is a crazy conversation that we're talking about the third time to take over this property, especially when Renee, my mom, has put so much time and effort, energy on programming and connectivity like we're talking about. She knows what the community wants. Meeting space and salsa lessons, and it's been such a wonderful community environment. They are hitting out of the park. When I go to other parks like Mayo Park or whatever it is, I feel like I've got to find a way into this possibly locked room to leave my ID and charge $5 for my friend who might be biking with me, where no one's welcome. Maitland's built this exclusive environment, not inclusive. Everyone jokes around about calling it hate because there's so much hate here. It's disappointing. We need to be more inclusive. We need to reach out to people. I don't know why the live stream is so hard to find. It needs to be out there. Places aren't made by makers. Places are made by integrity. You can't just steal this and say we're just going to run with their plan. It's ludicrous. My generation wants a walkable downtown. We want somewhere we can hang out with people and gather with people. It's not a problem that Jeremiah's is in a strip center. It's fine. But it could be nicer and less vehicle centric. We don't want to drive cars. My generation didn't want to drive cars. This whole idea that the reason why Maitland didn't happen was because people were afraid of all this traffic. We don't want cars. We just want to walk around. And the more suburban we build things, then we need cars. I think this whole thing is a distraction. Stop focusing on the Civic Center. Fort Maitland is a much better park if you want to talk recreation, because it's on a much better lake for that, versus using this intermediary storm retention water. Quinstrong Park is beautifully attached to the Arts Center and to the Senior Center, and when you look at ACI's plans, they show art and stuff in the library. So the library should be over by the Arts Center. I mean, I feel like if the Arts Center was still running the Arts Center, the gate would be fixed by now. This is totally a distraction. This is not what we want. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Who's next? Councilman.
Hello, Alan Lowndes, 1648 Choctaw Trail. I'm not going to speak about this particular resolution. I want to talk about the issue, general issue, which is whether or not the library / civic center makes good sense, and whether or not the discussion has run its course on that yet. I understand you all have taken the determination that Quinstrong Park is probably the best site for the library, but I think the public input is going to, you anticipate more public input on this and find out what type of library that would be and what programming would include. Certainly it's beyond dispute that the Civic Center, the venue people, the board at the venue has done a great job of doing the programming and running that building to its maximum capacity. I hope that we don't miss an opportunity here. I know that, conceptually, there have been discussions about the library / civic center being a brand new building. Clearly the library has to be renovated if not raised. I'm not sure that who would complain that loudly if the civic center was thoroughly renovated if not raised. If you could bring together the synergy of the two buildings, and I know that Renee and Butch have put a lot of effort into that, and Butch, we did conceptual plans for that several years ago. I mean, it was probably 6 years ago or more that we did that and talked about that. I don't think it would be great for the community if we get into a divisive adversarial debate about, a taking But I would also think it would be a terrible missed opportunity if we have not, if we don't quit, if we don't continue negotiations about what possibilities may lie in a joint building. You know, because I think what you have is two buildings right next to each other, two buildings which serve a public purpose, two buildings which have probably run the course of their useful lives. And I think if you were to think about, you know, combining those two things, and I think the programming is largely the same. They're both educational, they're both recreational, and as we've discussed before, you know, the program of libraries now is not just sitting down and reading a book. Now they have yoga classes, they have cooking classes. You know, the Civic Center does, you know, Zumba classes, and salsa classes, and cooking classes, I'm sure as well. I think there's a great, I think they would be serving the same function. And if we kind of, if we move away from that, and we miss the opportunity to bring those things together on probably what is the most beautiful site, you know, in Maitland, right there at the end of the south end of our downtown. You know, that would be a great anchor to have a new site, and you know, based on perhaps conceptual designs that Bush has put together, or that ACI might put together. I know there's a lot of, you know, there were reasons not to select the Civic Center site, the venue site, and one of them is because of the difficulty, the assumed difficulty of acquiring the property, because it's not ours. The other two totally were ours, and so that was not an issue. But if we could continue negotiations, if we get, you know, as Howard, former Mayor Schieferdecker said, you know, if we can meet together and try to figure out what works best for the city on all these issues. I mean, both of these buildings are trying to serve the same function. They're both really trying very hard. And if we're going to miss the opportunity because, you know, we're going to get wrapped around the axle on the main issue, you know, we really will have missed the forest for the trees. So I hope we can continue to work together and see if we can, you know, get the home run for the city here. So, thank you.
Thank you, John. Who else would like to address the council on this specific agenda item? Going once. Hearing none, we'll close the public period, bring the discussion back to council. We heard some folks that are agreeably, you know, passionate about what the Civic Center is and does today. But I'm not sure that, again, from my own perspective, again, this is about the future, not today. So, any comments or questions hearing what we've heard? Then this might be your shot. Or a shot.
Okay. Thank you for the history lesson, Mr. Mayor, because I look at deeds all day long. This is literally my day job. And I look at this deed and I read it through, and there is a reversionary clause in the deed. Now, knowing real estate law as well as I do, I also know that a reversionary clause means that there needs to be a triggering event in order for the reversionary clause to become active. I'm wondering what the triggering event is that we are so concerned about that at this point in time we're having this conversation. From a philosophical standpoint and from a real standpoint, the philosophical is, do we have a higher and better use for that space and that land? Probably. Is it being put to its highest and best use currently? Probably not. But it's like the dog who catches the car. If we get the land, what are we going to do with it? And I think that that's a really genuine question that we need to ask. So I support exactly what the mics have said, which is we talked about the library already. And this discussion is separate from the library discussion. And I think it has to be separate from the library discussion, but we already talked about the library. And based on the recommendations from the consultants, Queenstown Park is the best solution for the library. So I don't want to talk about the library anymore because I think that that certainly puts this whole discussion into a different light. So if we're talking about this space and this land in isolation, separate and apart from our conversation about the library, what do we in the city of Maitland need this extra piece of land for? What are we going to do with it? I genuinely ask that question because I don't see that there's anything we're gonna put there that we don't already have contemplated somewhere else. And so it concerns me that we are at this point where we are talking about a private entity which privately owns the land. Do we agree that they're using it to the best use? That's literally up for debate. But unless they are actually falling afoul of the reversionary clause and are trying to sell the land to a third party, do we as the city of Maitland have any interest to intercede and to stop them from doing what they're doing? And I don't think so. From a legal perspective, I don't think so, but also from a perspective of a resident of the city, what are we going to do with this land if we get it? So I'm troubled that we are wasting our time on this, and I will say I feel we are wasting our time. We are in the middle of a pandemic. We have 30 people in this room. We're all breathing each other's air, and we're sitting here talking about this. And I'm really annoyed about that. I think that this is a discussion that could be had for another time. I don't think it's appropriate to be bringing it up tonight. I realize it's been tabled over and over again, and we have to bring it to conclusion. But I don't hear anything coming out of the discussion this evening that says, yes, you know what? If we take over the land from the Civic Center, and what are we going to do with it? What are we going to do with it? So I don't see the purpose behind the discussion. I don't see that the reversionary clause has been triggered, allowing the city to intercede. And right now we have a private entity running the property in a private manner, however they wish. You know, if the neighbor across the street from me decides that they want to tear down half of their house and put up a tarp, as long as they're not violating the city ordinances, I don't have a right to go over and complain that they've done it. This is a private entity running a private business. It's up to them how they want to run it. If the city of Maitland residents say, you know what, this is no good, we should have a zoo. We're going to put a zoo on the land. Okay, great. Well, if we have a discussion with the city residents and they really want that, then we could have a conversation and come forward to the Civic Center board and say, you know what, we think that here's a better use for the land. At this time, I don't know that we have a better use for this space. So I think that the best thing that we can do is that we need to come together with the board, the city council, and the board of the Civic Center, and sit down and iron out whatever the problems are, wherever they came from, however long that they've been stewing, and we need to come to some sort of agreement over what we want to do with the future of this space. It's not up to us to make that decision. I don't see that we want to spend $500,000 in a pandemic while we have our hands out asking for a new library, to on top of it be trying to acquire land which we know is going to result in massive amounts of very expensive and protracted litigation. I mean, it would be stupid not to be doing that. So I just don't see what the end game is for why we're doing this, and it makes me very frustrated that on top of it, we've dragged all these people out here who are breathing each other's air to have this conversation. So I'm going to sit back, and I would really like to hear what exactly the plan is for this land, because I don't see that we have one at this point. We're just having a conversation about it, and I don't know that this navel gazing is getting us anywhere.
All right. Goss?
Well, I very much share the councilwoman's concern about sitting here breathing each other's droplets over this issue, and I would make a resolution make a motion to deny the resolution to acquire the Civic Center property. I'd like to end this.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? We have a motion, do we have a second?
I will second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Now, do we have any further comments before we would call the motion?
There's
a lot out there. Yeah, there is.
Fancy, you want to go there, Bob?
Yeah, I'll go. There's a lot of things, and I think a lot of people made a lot of good points. you know, and Lindsay said it, and Mike said it, and everybody here knows it. That building is way outdated. What I do for a living is, I do catering. And I go to different cities, different towns, different halls, and nothing looks like that the Civic Center. If I was getting married, I wouldn't get married there. I see that it has terrible sound. It has, the floors aren't carpeted. That causes some of the sound. I'm glad to hear they just redid the bathrooms after 56 years. With the terrazzo floor, you have slip issues. You have, and like you said, it's not emblematic of Maitland, you know. And I don't know. I'm wondering how much private events we have to how many Smurf groups we do. Okay. And if you don't know, a Smurf group is social, military, educational, religious, and fraternal. Okay, is that what we're mostly using it for? Is it getting any private, or how busy is it? So I'm seeing these other venues in other towns, they stay packed. And I guess my question is, do the citizens, if I want to go rent it, do I get a discount? Because that's happening in other towns. So are we serving the citizens? Are we giving them the value that they deserve so they can come use this? I heard that it was for free. Are we allowing groups such as Boy Scouts, Toastmasters, do they have access to this free room? I'd really like to know. I hear all this great stuff, but yet I see a lot of clubs out there needing space. I see a lot of people needing use of it, and it's outdated. And I always hated that it's called, you know, the Maitland Civic Center, because everybody thinks that the city owns it. And I think we're better than that, and I think it needs to be updated. So, that being said, I think, you know, you really do need to get with the city, have a talk. We need to see what we can do, because it's way outdated. Nobody likes it. I mean, I've been there and spoke, and it bounces everywhere. I don't know. I'm pretty, I'm pretty emotional about it. I don't really like it. So I wish we had something beautiful, so when the people come into our town, to Bev Reffin's point, it's an anchor. That's what people are going to first see, you know? And I think Matt, the last speaker, said, oh, people want a place they can walk to, they can go to. You're not using that. That's not kicking that off. I mean, if I was getting married, I want a place that's beautiful. I want a place that's, you know, luxurious. And I can't really say that with the Maitland Civic Center. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done with it. And I think the city and the Civic Center need to get together and have some discussion.
So what's been
How was
interesting?
that, Mike?
It was interesting. What's interesting for me about this, and Lindsay and Vance are, I've gotten to see a slight switch over of different thoughts, and what's been interesting about the library discussion, the civic center discussion, is that, and what I'm really interested to hear the community feedback is, everyone seems to have a very different approach to this, and for whatever reason, I find myself, I go to those two buildings over there and I see some history, and it's weird because I've talked to my wife about this, about she goes to that library all the time, and she appreciates some of the history of that building, and I've realized in talking to different people that everybody's looking for something different. So I think it's going to be an interesting process to get a consensus of what the city wants out of a future library building. I think the view of the Civic Center is interesting because I think there's a lot of different approaches. I go in there and see character in that building. So it's just been an interesting discussion to see this evolve, and I think it's going to be an interesting discussion to see how it evolves in the future. As far as getting together though, I don't know that that's exactly where we're at. To be honest, I think that we're making these weird arguments. We're saying they're an independent board, but then we got to get together with them. And I think there's always been synergy, and I think there should continue to be synergy with the Civic Center. And how can we collaborate, how can we work together, and whether that's through a private board or if it was a part of the city itself, I don't think that discussion is different. That's always, whatever is on that site is always going to be a complement to what the city's trying to do at large, whether that be a next door library or a library that's down the street. So I don't know that, I think there should always be a collaboration, but I don't know that it's a collaboration on what's the future of that building with that board. I don't know that that's exactly correct. I think that the collaboration should always be how can the uses of that building keep going. So, I mean, that's my view of the fact. I think we're confusing a lot of issues here tonight. Being library, being the future of the building, being whatever. I think this is truly, do we want the city to take over and acquire that property? To me, that's the singular issue here tonight. And I don't think we should pass judgment on the venue itself. I don't think it's a personal issue. I think it's truly, do we think it's in the best interest of the city to acquire the property? And that's the way I view it. I don't believe that it is in the best interest of the city to acquire that property in light of a lot of things that are going on about the uncertainties of what we want to see on a future library site. What does that look like? What does that entail? And I don't think that that's the city's role at this time is to acquire that property. But to me, we've gone a lot of places here, and to me, this is a singular issue of do we want to acquire the property? It's not a judgment of the reversionary clause, because I don't think that was actually the assessment to be made, because I don't think you were asking that question. I think you're truly asking, do we want to go acquire the property?
Mike, I think you're right. I think it's two separate discussions. I mean, the library is library by itself, and this is a total different discussion. You know?
So I understand that they're together, but to me this was a discussion. Do we want to acquire the site by the meeting stated in the resolution? And I think we've gone a lot of places, but to me this is a more of a simple issue of do we want the city to acquire the property now?
I mean, I can see a lot of uses for it. I mean, even to what Bev Reppin said, the playhouse. I mean, a place where, you know, Pam can play, a place where we can do school plays, where, you know, Central Florida Community Arts can put on, you know, a play or some kind of musical.
I get advanced, but
listen, I understand, I'm not done, but is that a plan, and is that something we've had, is it on our CIP? No, but is there uses we could use? Yes. Or another civic center, I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah,
or an updated one.
I think there's a lot of,
as much as I enjoy reading this there, I can do the math here, and I would appreciate it if you would kind of look at calling the question.
Well, I'm done. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate your point.
So I have a question for Sharon, just on, you know, I think Mr. Jim Panico was talking about paying the city for drainage.
Stormwater fee, your environmental stormwater fee. Commercial properties pay that.
Okay.
Yes, pay the user fee.
But that's another problem I see with that property is they don't capture any stormwater. It goes right into the lake. So just add that on to the outdated problems that it has.
Again, let me finish up, and Mike, I'll try to be as brief as I can. These are different discussions. I'm thrilled to death, and Mike correctly characterized my voting along with the idea of wanting to give Quinn Strong Park, you know, a preference to keep the momentum going of a new library facility. Now, and every one of you have touched on it in one form or another. We have no idea
what our citizens, what level of service, what kinds of things they'd like to be able to see able to be done or participated in either a library or a community center. We have no idea. All we've heard from is the people that have chosen to speak either in the library selection, site selection process with their own interests. We've heard council's interests, and we've heard of consultants' subjective view of what relative merits of different sites would be. We work for everybody out there. You know, I see right here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the 14 officers or directors of the Civic Center board here tonight. You know, our oaths of office include not working for just our friends, people we're familiar with, but they're for people that haven't been born yet. And until we learn more about what our community wants to see in their futuristic view, and we don't know what that is. I think I joked about it before in that site selection process. We don't know how many humps they might want on that camel. And we'll have to prioritize that, right? We'll have to decide what that is. That's our job. We haven't even asked yet. Now, whether that turns out to be 11 humps on that camel, and we folks want to have a variety of levels of service provided for that we don't have an option to provide today. With all due respect, and I mean that sincerely, the Civic Center is limited in its utility. And we know that. Do we not deserve a facility that might be able to facilitate activities, events, library needs, a variety of community center needs that we don't have today because we don't have choice? I'm going to provide us a choice that it's not limited. A community campus could involve both the Gwen Strong and the subject property site. What a wonderful vision. What an opportunity for pride of ownership. Do I know? Yeah, you betcha. I have some ideas about how that can work. But y'all didn't like me king. So you know what? I need to get public input and support for whatever that might be. Well, we don't know what that is. But if we don't have and own the Civic Center site, it's not a choice. Because there cannot be a public-private partnership.
They're all over the country.
Where the city owns the land and a third party owns, manages, and operates the facility. And until those discussions get to be had, and I'm open to revisions on this. I'm open to ideas. Nobody from the Civic Center Board of Directors has reached out to me whatsoever in regards to this. Whatsoever. Now, the idea being, I'm not sure the collaborative part of this pretend collaborative effort comes from. Because last January to February, I'm not sure exactly what happened in discussions between the Civic Center Association and their board and our city manager. Don't remember. Actually, I do remember, but I can always check that. The idea of putting specific dates in here was going to require some action. on both the city's part and the board of directors. I don't think that we can continue to pretend not to know that we've got an unduplicatable piece of real estate there that is, in terms of community benefits, underperforming to be kind. Now, part of the history lesson earlier, Mike, was so many folks in the city of Maitland would presume that the city of Maitland owns the building. Until January, even a greater percentage didn't even know that the city of Maitland didn't own the building. Now it's out there, at least. And I felt like the citizens needed to understand how the ownership and so forth of the property has come to be. And that we are in a spot needing to make choices for our future. Just like we're trying to make with the library. Whatever that may be. So, I can go on, and you all know I can go on. If there's any other questions or comments? Anyone? All right, Ms. Bray, if you would, go ahead and call the roll.
Councilmember Wild,
So what's the motion? Who made the motion?
You made the motion.
Thomas made the motion to deny. Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie,
Next.
Councilmember Hall Harrison,
Aye.
Councilman Thomas,
Aye.
Mayor McDonald.
Does it matter? Nay. Okay, very good. Go forth and let's collaborate.
Mayor, do we take 5 or 10 to get the second?
Yeah, sure, we can do that.
I like how you get to the first motion and we'll send it down.
5 minutes, everybody.
Good to see you too. Yeah, you see all the hustling I have to do around
Good to be able to stand up. Good.
Hey, good to see you, sir. See you too. You know what, at our age, isn't it good to be seen any day?
Yeah, I can't wait to get this first year under my belt.
I
get a little emotional still. I get emotional, I'll let it run with me. I gotta keep myself calm.
You used to be young. I did. You were young and energetic. It wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy job up there. Maybe you should have applied for that one. Maybe you should have been happy down here.
Thank you. Mayor? Councilman Thomas?
Hey, Maria, want to say hello?
Hey, Howard. See you later. Have a good one. He's gone.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. He needed to go home.
All right, let's call this meeting back to order. It is now 8:55, and let the record reflect that Councilman Thomas is retired for the evening. Now, and is no longer participating in this meeting. Now, getting this ourselves back online. Ms. Maria, if you would please read the title of the decision item number 2.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Maitland, Florida, amending the procedure and requirements for securing a permit to hold a special event, providing for legislative timing, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for conflict, and providing for an effective date.
All right, Jay. Share the facts with us.
Mr. Mayor, Council, good evening. Good beard. This is a very simple item with just a couple of cleanup items. We're doing the Chapter 14, the special event procedure. We basically wanted to change the provision that would only allow nonprofit groups from putting in special event applications to the city. We feel that the city attorney verified that it would be a good idea to eliminate that restriction, and we're also doing quite a number of changes to the provisions as far as in regulations with fireworks. Fire department worked quite a bit on changing that and modernizing that ordinance. Other than that, there's just a few other cleanup items, so if you have any questions, I'll be happy to.
Anybody have any questions of Jay? I mean, Brandon, I presume we're good with the fireworks provisions?
Yes, sir.
Counselor, I presume we're good with the text changes?
We are so good that I endorse it heartily.
Wow.
Take a note, Miss Maria.
Eclipse ordinance.
All right. Any other questions or comments before we go to the public?
Mr. Mayor, if I could add in, I did have one other item I want to add.
Okay.
We wanted to change the ordinance slightly and just add one simple provision. The requirements for special event applications. Right now, we require groups to submit to the city a certified traffic plan, a maintenance of traffic plan to the city from a certified professional. We have language to that regard, and we realized we omitted that, but we'll go ahead and add that into the ordinance we bring with you on October 26th.
Yeah, I did hear from one of our citizens regarding that, and that this was I think Chairman, I remember the Rotary that was wanting to participate in an event in the future.
Right, it was the FDOT bridge opening.
Right.
We are requiring certified MOT plans now. We want to codify it so that it's not an issue. You know, we've been getting them and people are complying. It's, you know, a minimum requirement to make sure everyone stays safe.
Right. Okay.
You don't want to wing it.
No, I understand. But I want to bring to everybody's attention that this has at least come up. And that was the specifics of that. All right, anybody, did I already ask for the public input?
Yeah.
Oh, I did? Yeah. And nobody, Stacy, wanted to say a word. So, about that. Anything else?
I'll make a motion to move to introduce the proposed ordinance amending chapter 14 of the city code as presented and set a public hearing and action date for October 26, 2020.
And I will second it again. I'm happy to be your second man.
Thanks, buddy.
I like it. I'll make a motion in a second. That sounds good. Any further comments? If not, Ms. Maria?
Thank you. Councilmember Guthrie?
Aye.
Councilmember Paul Harrison?
Aye.
Councilmember Wild?
Aye.
Mayor McDonald?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
You're not quite done yet. Our next, Ms. Maria, if you read the title for the next ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida relating to fire prevention and amending the Maitland City Code, implementing the Florida Fire Prevention Code, adopting the Florida Fire Prevention Code by references and reference provisions of naturally recognized codes, providing for the general regulations of fire prevention activities within the City of Maitland, readopting the local technical amendments as prescribed by Florida statute, reorganizing sections to coordinate with the Florida Fire Prevention Code, providing for clarification of requirements regarding standpipes, readopting fire sprinkler system requirements, readopting electronic monitoring requirements for fire sprinkler systems, providing for conflict, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing for an effective date.
All right, Randy, you pull the short straw. Fill in the blanks for us.
You got it. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Basically, what we have here is just a standard readoption of fire codes. Every 3 years, the State Fire Marshal's Office updates to the newest version of the code that will go into effect on January 1st. So we take those codes and correlate them with our local ordinances and make sure there are no discrepancies, which we did not find this year. So the majority of the changes are just updating code versions and a few code references that were out of date. The only substantial change was to our open burn permit. Basically, we were requiring permits for small fire pits, residential fire pits. Basically, we just streamlined it, took that out, so if residents have small commercially purchased fire pits, they can burn without having to pull permits. There was no monetary value to the permits anyways, so we just removed that. But other than that, there really aren't any substantial changes outside of the code references.
Good question, and I've never done this, but I live on a lake, and if I go down by the lake and I want to dig a hole and do a fire, do I need a permit for that, or just in that self-contained big hole,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, no, we basically took out any need to have a burn permit, but what we did do is set parameters on how you can burn. So it has to be within the confines of a commercially purchased fire pit or chimenea that's no larger than 3 feet in diameter. So as long as it falls within that, it's fine. Now we do get calls regularly for residents burning, and the smoke creates a nuisance environment for neighbors. Neighbors will call us, so there is a caveat on there that allows the fire department to show up, and if we deem that it is an environment that can create environmental hazards or a nuisance to neighbors, then we can have them stop the fire. But outside of that, as long as you're burning within the confines of the ordinance, you can do it.
Okay, thank you.
Question, Mike, Lindsay? Anything jump out at you?
Is that like should you cite any other version of the code to give them what they're talking about? I was reading, that's enough?
Yeah, it's fine.
Says you can't do fire pits on Chinook, but other than that.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Yeah, anybody from the public like to address this specific agenda item? Hearing none, seeing none, we'll bring it back to council on a motion to be in order. Wait, Mike.
All right. I'll move to introduce an ordinance amending and readopting City Code Chapter 6 Fire Protection and Prevention and set the public hearing date for October 26, 2020.
And second.
Lindsay, did you believe she was getting that?
She was working it out.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further comment? Hearing none, Ms. Maria?
Councilmember Paul Harrison?
Aye.
Councilmember Wild?
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie?
Aye.
Mayor McDonald?
Aye. Okay, our next decision item. Ms. City Clerk, if you would.
Thank you. An ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, amending Chapter 2 Administration, Article 4 Pensions and Retirement, Division 4 Police Officers and Firefighters to amend the City of Maitland police officers and firefighters pension plan membership, provide for conflicting ordinances, provide for severability, and provide for an effective date.
All right, very good. Ms. Sharon, you want to fill in the blanks for us?
Sure. So in August 2012, the mayor was removed as a trustee of the police officers firefighters pension plan, and a member of senior management was appointed by city council. At that time, that was me, and so what the intention was to have somebody with a financial background. Obviously, you're a trustee of a pension plan, and also have somebody representing, city administration as opposed to council members. The subsequent to that, there was a ballot that passed term limits for any member of a permanent board that's appointed by the council. So that then applied to that member of senior management, which was not the intention. The intention was not to have Jerry Gray, our now finance director, term off and me have to go sit back on there, and then I term off and he goes back, because we're the only two financial folks. Otherwise, we'd be appointing Jay for Parks and Recreation or our Public Works Director. And so
We'll never let the mayor do that.
And in speaking with the pension board attorney, he suggested that we name the finance director, much as we do with the police and fire chief, as members of the board. They would then not be subject to term limits. It doesn't change the composition of the pension board, so there's no impact financially. And there was no real objection in terms of having that continuity. They do go to training, the trustees, and so the longer you're on there, the more information you have about how pension plans function. So this is something we brought forward with the pension board attorney having reviewed it, saying there's no financial impact. We will get an actuarial opinion if you introduce it, which will go with it to the state to show that although we're changing the verbiage in the code, there's no actual change to the composition of the membership.
All right. We have never had to make a vote that's any easier than this one. Questions? Cliff, jump out at you, anything?
It jumps out at me that this is the one time of the year that I get to say it. It's not me, because I'm not the pension lawyer.
All right, anybody from the public like to address this specific agenda item? Stacy wouldn't dare, so hearing one, hearing none, and seeing none, we'll bring the discussion back to council on a motion to be in order. Lindsay, your turn.
Oh, well, so generous. I will make a motion to introduce an ordinance to amend Chapter 2, Article 4, Division 4, to amend the membership of the police officer and firefighter pension plan, and set the public hearing date for October 26, 2020.
Very good. We have a terrific motion. And a second I'm looking for?
I'll second it for discussion.
Come on, boys, let's discuss. We have a motion and a tentative second. And the presiding officer is going to accept that as a solid second. So, hearing none, Ms. Marie, if you would call the roll.
Thank you. Councilmember Wild?
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie?
Aye.
Councilmember Paul Harrison?
Aye.
Mayor McDonald?
Aye.
That was close.
Okay. Let's spool it right along here. Okay, you read, we moved that. Now we got Mike, we got your.
Then we got the disposal.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Franchise agreement.
Yeah.
Did you ever do a public hearing?
On which one?
Yeah, nobody spoke, nobody got up.
Okay, we did.
Oh, yeah.
I was given
I
a
forgot
motion.
already. Sorry. Okay, so Mike, yes, if you
Who's going to
would.
do the franchise agreement? Is that Sharon or is that?
Maria.
Maria needs to read the ordinance.
Yes, Maria, go ahead, I'm sorry.
An ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, granting disposal means a non-exclusive franchise to provide roll-off container collection and disposal of waste within the City of Maitland, Florida, outlining the franchise duties and providing for terms and conditions under which such franchise will operate, provide for severability, and provide for an effective date.
Thank you, ma'am. Michael, take it away.
No, it's me.
Oh, okay.
This is the introduction for another of the non-exclusive franchise agreements. This is Disposal Inc., which is a very large company, been around since 1979, has 600 roll-off containers, and wish to do hauling in Maitland. They do qualify, submitted an application, and staff is recommending that you introduce the ordinance granting a non-exclusive franchise and set the public hearing date for October 26th.
This was the consent agenda, item, right, Mike?
No.
Oh, there you go.
Sorry.
That's the order.
Oh, I'm so very sorry. What's my name again? Go ahead. Anybody have any questions for Sharon?
I think we talked it out.
Yeah, there we go. Anybody from the public like to address this specific agenda item? Hearing and seeing none, we'll bring it back to council, and one of my favorites, a motion would be in order.
I'll move to introduce an ordinance granting a non-exclusive franchise agreement to Disposal Inc. and set a public hearing date for October 26, 2020.
Second.
Man, that's well done. We have a motion and a solid second. No mess around second.
That was a switchblade second.
I like it. Hearing no other questions or comments, Ms. Maria, if you would please call the roll.
Thank you. Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie.
Aye.
Councilmember Paul Harrison.
Aye.
Mayor McDonald.
Aye.
So this is my.
I'm sorry, Michael, I was getting it.
And
I
I'm,
was looking at page over, so.
yeah, and I'm sorry to have to do this on a consent agenda item. The only reason I'm pulling it is that my firm, and Cliff, if you think that this is not an issue, I don't care, but my firm represents Lynch Oil on environmental issues in somewhere else, South Florida or somewhere. And so with the conflict issue, I just bring it up, and if there's an issue, I will abstain and declare the conflict. But we don't represent Lynch Oil on this matter, but it's in an environmental matter, we represent Lynch Oil.
It falls into the category of issues.
It falls into the category of voting on a matter that inures to a principal by whom you were employed. And so, given that we had this exact experience, although with a much more direct example with former Councilman Miller, and he didn't pay a $5,000 fine, you were smart to pull it, and I would abstain, because even if I'm wrong, you're okay, but if you vote and I'm wrong, you're not okay.
Yeah, and again, I hate to do that on a consent item, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, but we love you, Mike.
Yeah, I'm sorry I had to do that, but that's why I did it.
So we got a form to submit? Chris?
Yeah, I've got it.
Oh, got that, okay, so we're complying with state statute.
So can I make a motion to approve the consent agenda? The whole thing, we didn't approve 1 and 2, right?
No, we did consent agenda items, so now you have to have this item specific.
Oh, okay.
But it's now agenda item 7.
Yes.
So if you make the motion, there's at least 2 people who can second it, not 3 that can vote.
Okay. Then I move to approve the purchase for the motor fuel from Lynch Oil Company.
I will
You're
second.
on, thank you. We have a motion and another solid second, so any further discussion from those that can discuss it?
Yeah, sorry.
All right, hearing none, Ms. Marie, public, anybody like to address this particular agenda item? Hearing none, we'll bring it back, Ms. Marie.
Councilmember Guthrie.
Aye.
Councilmember Paul Harrison.
Aye.
Councilmember Wild.
Abstain.
Mayor McDonald.
Aye. Okay. Am I missing anything yet, Maria? Well, it doesn't appear as though we've got a lot of discussion items. Y'all don't want to hear my voice anymore. Mr. City Attorney, if you
Yes,
jump out.
thank you. I actually tried not to, but I have to tonight. I had sent you all an email via the city manager of the line day, I'm not sure, but I just say you would reply all. And I can either interpret the fact that literally no one has called me back or responded to it, that you have zero interest, or that it's, as has happened with many of us, that you're too busy and would like some additional time. But I need to have some idea so I can respond back to the attorney. It is not up to me to tell her how you feel or not feel, but it is up to me to give her an idea about whether or not it would be worthy of her efforts to bring anything additionally forward in the lines of what I put to you in the email. And so that is the issue, and I just need your feedback, and from that feedback, again, without sharing it with any of you, what the others of you say, I will have some sense of what to tell her about the future of her proposal.
This is regarding the Peacock Board question?
Yes, it is.
All right. Anybody have any questions that you haven't already discussed with the city manager?
If you do, just, if you have anything to tell me, let me put a deadline on it, not press you, but just so I know. If I haven't heard from you by, say, close of business Friday, I'll assume you don't want to do anything, or you have no reason to have any further discussion with me, and I will relay that.
Is that a good date for everybody?
Yeah. So what would be the way to do this, even if you wanted to add the use or add the language that's being proposed? What's the process for it?
Well, unfortunately, Mr. Mathis is not here. One of the things, when I sent out the email to you all, he responded, but didn't provide details that he has further concern. And I don't know what that is, but ordinarily the process would be providing an amendment that includes either an exception or a special exception or something that would satisfy. And again, I'm not sure that what you guys might be willing to even talk about is something that they would be interested in, but I'm also equally sure that they have they have a very dubious claim. How about that?
And so there are some elements in that claim that have not yet been addressed.
Yes, one of them specifically is how do you evaluate a claim based on appraisal that's not required and is a flaw on its face in the claim that has been made, i.e. you have to have an appraisal, have an evaluation, and one of the deep concerns that I have legally is, although, again, no appraisers, you can find an appraiser say almost anything, credibly it's going to be a different story. Because the highest and best use, arguably, by someone who does a lot of depositions of appraisals, is going to be residential. That's not in any way affected by what the situation is, and would provide a much higher yield and valuation than what they have right now.
And so you're going to keep us apprised of this as it evolves?
I'm not sure that there's a claim that is meritorious.
Right.
That is my legal opinion. But there are also reasons to avoid lawsuits which make me rich, which I like.
Sure.
But which make y'all poorer, which you don't like. So that's why it's important that I tell you.
So she just filed the protest claim?
She filed the notice, and her 150 days run sometime in November.
Yes.
And what happens if we win? We don't get the fees, right?
Oh, yes, we do.
We do get fees?
Oh, we do.
Okay. So it's a prevailing attorney's fees in either way?
Yes, it is. I know because I prevailed in the consent on the issue. However, again, the whole idea is if there's a solution that doesn't cost you anything and if you don't object to, by all means, it's cheaper. But right now, my response, if I had to write it today, would be, you have a faulty claim, you have no appraisal. And she knows it. She was thinking that by starting this ball rolling, we could see, is there a way to solve it?
I thought you said you were going to get paid on success fee.
Well, yeah.
That's what I heard.
Now there's a pain, but it's so very much follow.
Yeah. Within the bounds of our downtown Maitland district, which that parcel is, we have some provisions that run counter to what they might like to do. Is that fair enough?
Yeah. In the future, having essentially just done a massive, what do you call it? Remodel? I don't know what you call what they did, but they did an overhaul.
Perfectly legal remodel.
This falls in the category of overthinking, in my opinion, about what the real concerns are. I'm not saying the property owner has appraised them, but I think that the legal reality is that it's much more likely that this property is going to transfer to a developer at some point in the distant future when probably we're all retired than anything else. And certainly, I think a reasonable appraiser would say that's the highest and best use for that property.
Okay. Anybody have anything else you want to share with the council at this point? I'm reminded of our workshop on October 19th, on next Monday at 5:30, and if you might have any considerations of possibly being a little hungry about 5:15, you might let Ms. Maria know what you might like to have so that you can give your 100% all to the workshop. That would be, this would be the time.
I'll be sending out a menu. Thank you.
She's so good. All right, so anything else? We're
Get the gal to go when you need her. We're done. Thank you.
What? We didn't need it.
Yes, what?